All right, what's up, guys? We're back with another podcast episode, and this week we've just got a couple small topics we want to talk about. There actually wasn't too much in the news to go over this week. The first thing I want to mention is just that I have a Chomps discount code now. If you guys remember me talking about these little beef sticks that are just, it's like a healthy version.
No more muffins.
Hey, whoa. Not no more muffins. But you guys...
less muffins.
Oh, yeah, less muffins. All of you make fun of me for liking those muffins. Well, you can't make fun of me for those beef sticks from Chomps, because as far as I can tell, they're actually pretty healthy. And I like them a lot. So now if you use discount code PBSTUDIO, you can save 10% at checkout. If you guys try them, let me know what you think. I like them a lot. I end up eating like 2 or 3 of them when I'm at the court for a couple hours. So those are really good. But then the next thing I wanted to go into is just an announcement from USAP. I'm going to read some of this really quick, but basically they just announced that now they're going to have a division of quiet paddles that they kind of certify, and there's a lot of questions that I have, but I'll just read some bullet points really quick, and then we can kind of discuss it. So first, they did a bunch of tests over the last 15 months, and now they're going to be in the certified quiet list, it has to have a 50% or less of the acoustic footprint of equipment commonly sourced and used in community parks. So I guess just 50% quieter than paddles that we use now. The next bullet point was USA Pickleball will provide test fixture requirements and procedures to manufacturing during development, specification relief to enable manufacturers to creatively use new materials, configurations while preserving the nature of the game, and ongoing collaboration and guidance to several global brands in sporting goods. So before we go to the other brands, I want to talk about this real quick, Will, because notice how they said, my first biggest question reading the announcement, because they didn't make it clear, was, are these paddles going to be like certified for tournament use as well? And when they said new materials and configurations, that pretty much immediately screams to me, there's no way these are for tournament use.
Yeah, they're just, I don't know. Maybe they'll have a separate tournament, or maybe they're using this kind of as a, let's see, like maybe not a banned list. Like this is like a semi-banned list, because it's if a paddle was first approved and then something goes wrong or wonky and it was just banned, and then people are like, oh, what am I gonna do? Like, you can't use this paddle anywhere, like in regular play or tournament play. But maybe this is kind of a way to like move some of these paddles to another list, and they can, you'll see what they do. They'll be changing the rules all the time, the goalposts. Maybe they'll use it, maybe they won't, we don't know. And with their track record, we still won't know. This just causes more confusion, if anything. Like,
my biggest thought when I was reading this, assuming that it will be, let's just say it's 2 separate lists, which I think that's what it's going to be, and especially be based on one of the other bullet points coming up. But my problem with this is, okay, we have now made paddles, or you're going to try and make paddles that are quieter. I'm totally fine with that. I think for neighborhoods where pickleball is a real problem with the noise, I think that's good. I think we do have to solve that problem, especially with how many more courts we need. My problem is, if we're going to have 2 separate lists, let's say you're brand new to pickleball. Paddles are already so confusing. Now you're going to have to try and explain to people, well, there's quiet paddles over here, which are not USAP approved. And if you care about tournaments, you can't use them there. And let's say some of these quiet paddles are going to be expensive, because they're probably some of them will probably be expensive. So let's say $200. Okay, you buy a $200 paddle, now you get told, like, you go to other courts. Let's use this as an example. EVA paddles, they're going to be quieter. They'll probably pass this sound certification. Okay, I go and buy a Diadem Vice. Everyone loves it in this quiet area. I can use it there. I go to another park and everyone's like, hey, get that out of here. We don't play with those here. Well, now you're like, wait, what the heck? But I was told it was a quiet paddle so I can't use it. And then you have to explain like tournament paddles. So to me, the obvious answer, if you just had communities where sound is an issue, if you're going to change paddles to something like EVA, you might as well have just used a completely different ball.
True.
Because now if you go to another park, at least your expectation is, okay, this is what a regular ball is. This is what a quiet ball is, so we can actually play in this area. But now you're not having people who need 2 different paddles for 2 different locations. Like, it's just a ball.
Right, and exactly, and that's what's annoying. And they didn't even do, I mean, I guess maybe they're getting better, but they didn't even do a good job of policing just regular paddles, right? So now they're adding another layer of complexity and more work for them, for us, and for the players. It just makes it divisive, you know?
Yeah.
Like, just make the current rules that you have transparent and clear, and then maybe then you can, police another list. Because right now you can't even police the main
one
list. How are you? Exactly. Why?
Yeah, we'll see. Maybe, obviously, with the announcement they gave, the details were pretty vague. So it's possible that more of these questions will be answered and some of the assumptions are wrong. But when I was reading this, that was the first thing that went through my mind, is like, okay, we're going to have even more confusion in rec play now, which is great. And then just real quick, the other last 2 bullet points were, these are just quotes from the post they made. And it was, with the mission to encourage manufacturers to prioritize innovation in creating quieter products, the quiet category will encompass a wide range of products, including paddles, balls, paddle covers, and noise mitigation screens for pickleball courts. And then lastly, it said USA Pickleball is also launching an incentive program for manufacturers to deliver reduced... let me restart. USA Pickleball is launching an incentive program for manufacturers to deliver noise-reduced solutions in the competition certified category. So that right there, where they say competition certified category, makes me think it's going to be 2 different categories, but they want to incentivize companies to focus on creating paddles for that instead of like an EVA foam paddle. So I don't know. I just really wonder how much quieter you're going to get for some of these certified paddles. Now, I will say, let's talk about 2 paddles. We can't go into a lot of detail on these, but we can give some thoughts. So there's the new gearbox, and then there's the carbon concept paddles. So the new gearboxes, in my opinion so far, are quieter or a much reduced pitch from a polymer paddle.
At least the power version is.
Yeah, I haven't hit the control enough to... I haven't paid attention to the sound enough to really know. But then the carbon concepts, how do you feel about the sound on that? Because I got to hit it a little bit and it was different, but I don't remember if it was actually quieter.
I wouldn't say if it is quieter, it's not that much quieter, to be quite honest with you. Okay. I think there's room for improvement to make them quieter. There's more things, based on what I know, there's more things that they can do. Yeah. Right. And that would tweak the performance. But yeah, in its current form right now, I would say it's still just as loud as a regular paddle. Probably a little bit quieter, but not like the gearbox is.
Yeah.
Know? So we'll see. But I think that the that is the quietest paddle I think I've ever played with, that I know can be used, or that's USAP approved.
Yeah, I think it probably is on the quieter side of paddles that I can think of. Obviously, there might be a couple random legal ones that are also pretty quiet. But everyone who I've hit it with, one of the things they do comment on is the sound that it makes. No one has specifically said, it doesn't make very much noise, but they're always like, it just makes an interesting sound. So I'll be curious to know how much manufacturers can actually do with that. I'm also curious to know what the incentives from USA Pickleball are for people to create those paddles. But I feel like those 2 portions of that announcement make it sound like it's 2 separate lists. And I'm like, I don't know. I just think at that point, just change the ball. You don't need a separate category. It's just, hey, here's the quiet ball. If we used one of those foam tennis balls, I bet pickleball is so quiet now. I've never tried it, but I'm guessing it'd be really quiet.
Yeah, it would be really quiet. One of those foam tennis balls that they use for the youth tennis, 10 and under, like the red dot ball or the foam ball, because I think the red dot ball is still a very highly decompressed tennis ball, but you are right, there is just a foam ball, and you could probably play with that. But I don't know if it would be definitely be a different game, I would say, because the bounce would be different, and the speed would probably be a little different. But it's way easier to just give a different ball to players versus trying to police 2 different paddles. And you have to ask yourself, what is the intent behind this new list, this quiet list? What is their end goal? What are they trying to do? It sounds like from these bullet points that they are trying to, I guess, get some innovation in the space, maybe to move paddles to being more quiet. But I just feel like if you're going to do that, you might as well just change the main list, or, have a kind of like a rolling goal or deadline. Like let's say like 2 years or 3 years from now, we want to have paddles that have a decibel reading of this. And so that means it gives times for manufacturers to phase out all their current paddles while giving them time to kind of innovate and figure out new technologies to potentially make paddles quieter. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Whole thing kind of seems like a mess. Leave a comment down below, guys, and let us know which you would rather use. Would you rather use a different ball, or would you rather have to buy a completely different paddle if you're in an area where you had to play with a quieter paddle, or at least where it was highly incentivized? Because here's my other thought with this. Depending, like maybe certain HOAs will start saying like, hey, we're aware of this quiet paddle list. Like if you don't use one of these paddles, then you can't play here. I'm just like, okay, would people really rather spend another $100 to $200, or would you rather play with a different ball? And both, I think, change elements of the game. I think the ball would change things a lot, but so does using an EVA foam paddle. So I don't know. Just let us know down below. I'm genuinely curious what people would prefer, because I feel like if I was just a random normal person, I feel like I'd rather the ball be changed, because at least that's less money to be spent and less work. I don't know.
Unless that's what USA Pickleball wants. They want us to spend more money on pickleball.
I mean, who knows?
Paddles.
Maybe they're trying to stimulate the pickleball economy here. They're trying to like give manufacturers another new product line so that it, I don't know. But I kind of feel like the ball would be more preferred, but maybe not. I don't know. So
we'll see how it unfolds.
Yeah, we'll see how that unfolds. But we're moving on to our main topic this week. Will actually came up with this one, and it was just about what is the best way to teach a beginner pickleball. And I've thought about this a little bit in the past, not extensively, but we've obviously all had to explain it to people in the beginning. So we just had some areas that we thought we would kind of break down and go over, the parts that you have to teach people and what's frustrating and what's not. Will, didn't you like teach someone recently, and that's why this came up?
Yes, I have some friends who are visiting me. I think more people have visited me in this past 3 weeks or 4 weeks than I've had since I've lived in other areas. So my friend Katrina and Richard, they came through. I have some other friends that are also visiting me, I guess, later in October and potentially November as well. But
bro, what the heck? Where's my invite? Again.
I invite you all the time. Right, Chris, all the time. He doesn't want to come through. He's stuck there. He's like, oh, what's in Tulsa, Oklahoma? He can't handle the heat.
Maybe when the new facility launches, maybe that would be an excuse to come out.
Yeah. Come through. I think Brian is definitely going to come up as well. He wants to check out the facility. And then, I'm going to try and have you guys, you, Jeff, Brian, and other people just to come through to my local tournament that my pickleball community and club is hosting, called the Pickleball Classic. The Tulsa
When is
Pickleball
that?
Classic. That's going to be, those are always in September, usually a weekend before or after Labor Day weekend. We've had it on Labor Day weekend, but many people are out, doing vacationing, right? But there's some people who just stay in town, and it's a good time too, because people also have free time. They don't know what to do. They'll come through and compete. So yeah, I'm going to try to have you guys.
Did it happen this year? Cool. I didn't hear you talk about it at all.
No, it did. We were gone somewhere. I was gone somewhere. I can't
wonder if it was Hawaii.
Where now? It might have been. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. For a wedding. Because I know you obviously talked about it in the past. So it just makes sense. Oh, well, it's a bummer it didn't happen whenever this. Like, it'd be fun if you launched the facility with a tournament.
Right, exactly. However, I don't know if the facility's also coming along. They're just poured the concrete, so they're waiting for it to cure, and just making sure that it's level, even, that it's strong, and all that good stuff. I don't know. You should talk to Isaac. Isaac, your brother, works in concrete. I don't. So, yeah. But I think the tournament moving forward will still always be played at the La Fortune Tennis Center. But we're gonna have I don't know, some event and maybe practice and stuff at the facility as well. But yeah, you can definitely come through, check it out. I think it'll be a good time. So I can't wait for it to happen. Anyways, back to what were we talking about? Teaching.
Yeah, your friends that came, you had to teach them pickleball.
Yeah, and you not being invited because, you know, you being butthurt. Yeah, FOMO. It's okay. It's okay. Yeah, I had to teach them. And here's the thing, right? You kind of have to gauge first where their level is first, I would say, before you kind of explain the rules. Because some people just come through and they just want to know the rules right away. And then some people want to know how to hit right away. And so when two different people who are new come in and they're asking different questions, I have a tough time figuring out what to kind of teach first. I kind of want them to start hitting first, like dinking first, get a feel for the ball. I don't know. Is that what you do?
Yes. I actually also recently went through this maybe a month and a half ago where my uncle and some of my cousins were interested in learning, and I knew none of them had a racket sport background. So I was like, before we even try and learn how to play this game, you guys just need to hit the ball, because it's not going to be any fun if you swing and just miss the ball. So for probably 20 to 30 minutes, I just let them hit the ball.
And did they do a good job of hitting the ball? Because that is a challenge for one of my friends here right now. Their hand-eye coordination is just not that strong, and they're just really wristy. Balls are going flying, and I mean, aside from taking them aside and practicing hand-eye coordination with just catching the ball in their hand, it's kind of hard, especially if you're teaching multiple people at the same time, because you want them to be successful, because you know you want them to come back and have fun and play the game. But there are people out there that just have never played any racket sport or have just poor hand-eye coordination.
Yeah, that was one of my cousins. They had a pretty hard time. Like, just
so what did you do?
Honestly, my recommendation was you guys should just hit the ball. Like, I don't even think we need to play the game. I think you guys should just try and like move the ball around and hit it. Like, we were basically had two sides. We had four people, and it was just kind of like skinny singles. Honestly, it was mostly just dinking is really what it was. It was like
but
me and my
brother. Dink?
Well, dink. I mean, the ball was getting popped up pretty high. Like, and then it was like me and my brother just keeping the ball in play so that they could hit the ball. And so we did end up playing. So I loosely explained some of the rules, but really, if someone is like that where they have such a hard time hitting with the ball, I don't even think it's worth trying to keep track of the score, because I just think the rules are confusing, and it's going to be demotivating if you can barely even hit the ball, and now people are serving on you and you miss, and now they scored a point. Like, I just think that's demotivating.
No, I think you're right. Well, if you guys are out there and you're trying to teach somebody, just trying to get them into the game, I think obviously, dinking and hitting the ball. But what I tell people is to I first explain the arc, the bounce of the ball. And I always say to wait for the ball to hit the ground and then fall. And on its descent, that's when you hit the ball. Because I noticed my friend Katrina, she would always try to meet with the ball. As the ball's coming, she'd meet with it, and she's trying to get on the rise at the apex, and then she would just miss it, and it would go flying, and we can't get a rally going. And of course, you have to teach her and teach them proper technique as well. But anything underhand is usually the right way to kind of go, at least in my opinion. And then once they get that down, I try to have them move further back, and then finally we get to utilize the whole entire court, and just to see if they can get a rally going. And that's when it kind of starts getting fun. Yeah. And I think when you start them out, because we were only using half the court since it was four people, and we're kind of just like, dinking four people, like, two balls going at a time or whatever. I do think it probably would be wise to have almost two people come off and kind of let them try and hit the ball in the full court, just so they can kind of like move around a little bit more and like hit the ball. We didn't get to that point. We did play game, but I think that would be good just because when you dink, a lot of times the ball's going right back to you, so you don't really have to move your feet. But I think you have to kind of learn how to move your feet and hit the ball as well. Oh, let me tell you, it's so funny. My two friends who are here right now, Richard and Katrina, they're on the opposite spectrum. Katrina is like so focused on the ball that it's like she can't move. She's just trying to track it like so hard. So So she's not moving her feet, and she'll watch the ball go like past her. And when it comes to her, she's like, "Oh crap!" And she like forgets to like steady herself and get ready to swing at it. My friend Richard is he's like on Ritalin. He's like moving his feet, like jittering around. It looks like he took like 5 double shots of espresso or something, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, I gotta make sure I hit this ball at the right place." So it's on opposite spectrums, and it's just funny to see because one of them is just doing way too much, and the other one is doing not enough.
That's funny. They got to meet in the middle.
Exactly, and so teaching them both at the same time can be a little bit difficult because there's different symptoms that I have to kind of explain, you know?
Yep.
And it's funny watching them kind of figure out what kind of works for them. But the main thing that I see for most people who play is that they're really wristy. That's like the number one thing. Like, don't be wristy. As soon as you start flicking that wrist or adding the wrist, the shots are just not good. Nothing can be controlled. And that's a tip for you guys. If you guys happen to teach any beginners and you just happen to not be a, Jordan Briones, you know what I mean? So that's what you kind of have to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of our experience teaching some new people. I think now what would be kind of fun is just let's go back and forth on specific, like when you're actually teaching someone the rules of the game, let's say like hitting the ball is not a problem. Now you just have to explain pickleball to them. How would it go? So what's like the first thing you would start with?
Obviously the serve and to get it cross court and into the box. That's number one. That's usually a challenge for people as well. And that's like the first thing, right? And, scoring comes somewhere in there. I'm just not too entirely sure, but obviously serving, getting a cross court into the box and past the kitchen, because sometimes people will serve across court, but they'll get into the kitchen. And then it's also kind of a pain explaining the lines.
Yeah.
Too. It's like, okay, if it hits the kitchen line, it's out. But if it hits any of the other lines,
it's good.
It's in. Yeah. And I just wish that was, I wish if you hit the kitchen line, it was good, in my opinion. I don't know about you. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think it would help simplify some of that. Usually the route that I take is I do start with the serve. I explain that. And then I'll usually go over just other important aspects like, here's the kitchen. You can't hit the ball out of the air inside of this. I try not to use the word volley because if they don't have a, background, like they don't know what that is.
True. I usually demonstrate that. Like I'll have them toss a ball to me and I'm like, okay, so I'll show them this is good, this is not good. So usually I'll start in the kitchen, I'll hit the ball out of the air and I'll land outside the kitchen. I was like, can't do that. Then I'll hit the ball out of the air and I land in the kitchen and I said, okay, can't do that. And then I'll kind of just step my feet a little bit, like hovering over the line where it's clearly a foot fault. And I'm like, okay, can't do that. And then finally I show them if it bounces though, then I can step in and I can hit the ball. And that usually gets them kind of going for the most part.
That's one thing I actually want to talk about really quick because I haven't thought super hard about this, but I've tried to think of ways because I think one of the most misunderstood things in pickleball across many levels, except probably the higher levels, like maybe 4.0 plus, but people so often think you can't even step in the kitchen unless the ball bounces. So I'll see people where the ball tips over the net and they won't start moving into the kitchen until the ball has bounced once. And at that point, if it rolled over the net, it's probably too late because they always hear like, oh, unless the ball bounces, you can't go in the kitchen. So
this is true.
Sometimes I think what happens is to simplify explaining that rule because it's easier to say, don't go in here unless the ball bounces. The consequence of that is now people believe like they're just waiting patiently like, oh shoot, I can't go in there. So I usually just try and tell people like, look, I'll try and make it really easy. I'll say like, you could live inside this box if you wanted, but it's just a bad idea to stand here the whole time because if they hit it at you and you have to hit it out of the air, like now you would lose the point or, stuff like that. But sometimes I also just think that if you explain it kind of what you did, just like, hey, you can't be in here and hit the ball out of the air. I don't even know sometimes if I would explain like the momentum thing. I would almost just say you're not allowed to hit the ball out of the air here. And then if it comes up in a game later, then point it out. Because I feel like sometimes when you explain like scoring, serve, and kitchen, it's too much for people. They're like, the score alone is like an afternoon to explain.
Yes, I know. And we'll go over the score in just a bit, but I know I totally agree with you. I don't know the best way to explain. I think for the most part, people get it once you explain it a certain way, but there are nuances, when dealing with the kitchen that you kind of do have to explain more of as you play the game. But I don't know. I think explaining the way that I did is fine, so they know not to like go into it. And then as we play more and as they progress or they get better, then I'll add that rule. And then either people will be like, "Oh, okay, that's good to know," or they'll be like, "What the frick? You've been holding out on me. You should have like you're cheating. You're withholding information." And then they get mad at me, and I'm like, "Well, it is what it is. Not like it's gonna make a difference anyways."
I do think it probably is better to err on the side of simplicity and then explain nuance as they get into it more, because you're not going to explain every nuance of the game in their first session out, and most of that nuance probably isn't important. I just think if you can tell they're going to get into it more, like hopefully you can either explain more nuance to them like later if you play with them more or something, but just to keep it simple, it's probably best to not go over some of those really small things.
Right. For such an easy game, I feel like it can be complicated.
I know, right? It is. Seriously, whenever I start having to explain it to someone, I'm like, wow, there are a lot of really, especially once we start playing a game and there's like a rule I forgot to explain, I'm like, oh, yeah, you're not allowed to do what you just did. And it's like, oh, yeah, like I forgot about that one small thing.
Oh, there's one rule that I usually tend to overlook, and I always forget to explain it. And then also it's hard for new players to remember too. It's the 2 bounce rule. I always forget.
Oh, really? That's definitely one of the first things I explained when I'm explaining the serve.
Right. Well, here's the thing. When they're new, they kind of don't want to hit it out the air anyways. So typically it doesn't apply, right? But every once in a while, and obviously I'm already not hitting it out of the air. I let it bounce, on the second bounce, and then I hit it. And then with new players, they tend to let it bounce as well, just to give them more time and then to hit the ball. So it doesn't come up. And then every once in a while, like once they start feeling confident, they will take it out of the air on, before the second bounce. And I'm like, wait, can't do that.
Yeah.
And they're like, what? Why? And then I look like an idiot because I forgot to tell them. Like,
yeah. Dang it. That one does give me some weird looks whenever I've explained it. I'm like, yeah, you have to let this ball bounce twice. And they're kind of like, what does that mean? Or why? Or why? Yeah.
Yeah, why or what does that? Yeah, exactly. What does that mean? That's another thing you have to explain, like why and how do you? I mean, I just say, okay, serve, bounce once, bounce twice, then you can do whatever you want, free for all. Aside from the kitchen rules and things that I explained earlier, and then they pick it up. It's not a hard rule to kind of take in.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that is a usually probably how it ends up for me too. Is kind of just like. Yeah, after that 2 bounce rule, like you're good to do whatever you want except the kitchen, and usually people get it for the most part. But then we get to the worst part,
the score, the third number,
frickin' third number. It is the worst, by far, not even close. The worst part of explaining pickleball. What is the route that you take to try and explain it?
Yeah, so after they've done a few rallies, I find that this is the best way, but I call it strikeouts. And I think I mentioned this before, but I say, okay, when it's our team's turn to serve, everybody has to serve once on our team, okay? They serve, and if we keep on winning rallies, we continue to serve until we lose a rally, and then that server strikes out. Now, it's the second server, and they continue the rally and get awarded points until they strike out. Once we all strike out, then it's the other team's turn. And I don't know, from my experience, that helps a lot of people kind of, make sense of it all a little bit better. Of course, the switching and whatnot is a bit of a nuisance, but at least they kind of understand the concept of the third number at that point with the strikeouts. So that's how I explain it. What about you? Yeah,
I'm trying to think how I usually approach it. Like that idea of the strikeouts is probably much simpler than anything I do. I can't even remember with my cousins what I ended up doing. I feel like I would explain like, okay, here's the score. It's 0 to 11. And then there is this third number you have to be aware of. And it's basically just who the server is, because you get 2. So there's like, 001 and 002. Now that I'm thinking about this, I don't think I have a good way to explain this. Like, I think it would actually be kind of crappy for me to explain. So I definitely think I'm going to steal that strikeout idea.
The strikeouts. I think it works. The only thing I think what most new players forget or have confusion about is when they say, "Oh, I'm the first server and I'm the second server." They think they're assigned number 1 and number 2 the whole entire time. So when the ball goes back, if the first server is on the left side, they think the ball goes to the first server and they serve from the left side. It's like, "Oh, but I'm the first server. I should serve." It's like, no. Technically now, this go around, you're going to be the second server and your partner is now the first server. And then they're like, what? And I'm like, yes, I know. I do think that it could be simplified if you were assigned the first server and the second server the whole game. And no matter what side you're on, the first server always starts the serve, so you could start from the left side versus the right side. That could be interesting.
That could be an interesting way of doing it. I feel like part of me thinks just now that this is purely just now that I'm used to what I'm used to. I'm like, let's just leave it the way it is. But I feel like for new people, that would definitely be easier to explain, assuming that people can remember who started, which I don't think is usually a problem, at least not in my circles. So I don't think I'd be super opposed to it. It would definitely simplify some of it. I think the only thing it might confuse, like at the higher levels, a lot of times, like if you're confused about, okay, wait, where are we in the score? It can be like, okay, this person started and we were at like this score when we got the side out or whatever, and it can be easy to figure it out. I feel like it'd be confusing if now like one person started and they served from the left when they got the side out. Like I think you could easier to start, but you might confuse some things that are helpful at the higher level.
Potentially, I guess. I think apart from trying it out, I wouldn't know if it would work better or not. Because if you're assigned the first server and you always start, then if depending on what the score is, then you'll kind of know. If it's an odd score, you'll always start on the left. And if it's even, then you always start on,
the right.
The right. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it wouldn't be that bad.
Yeah. Okay. Anyways, scoring is still hard. I still to me, keeping track of score is the hardest thing in pickleball, even for me right now. And that and number 2, followed very closely by letting out balls go out. I think those are the hardest things in pickleball. Not a third shot drop, not even like an ATP or anything. It's freaking keeping track of score and letting out balls go out. It's the hardest thing.
So it's funny you mentioned being bad at the score, because one of my biggest problems as of recently is people are like, Chris, you are so bad at keeping track of the score. And the thing is,
but you're good. Remember me when we play together? I'm horrible.
Exactly. And here's what I think I have figured out. If I am with someone that I know is bad at keeping track of the score, I will like focus on it more, because with you and me, like at Kansas, for example, I knew where we needed to stack the entire time. I was usually telling you like, hey, you're supposed to be over here. There was no mix-ups. Here, I swear almost every point, not every point, but maybe at least every other point, if I get the ball or it's a side out, I'm always looking at my partner, like my brother or one of my friends, and going like, hey, what's the score right now? And I think it's 2 things. If I know that they're good at keeping track, I feel like my brain just automatically turns off. But I think the bigger thing is this usually happens when I'm recording gameplay for a review. So now my mind is always thinking about other things. Like 1, it's thinking about the paddle. I'm evaluating it. And then 2, I'm like looking at the light in the area and being like, oh, do I need to go like turn up the exposure, or like, is the tally light still on the camera? Like, are we still recording? So I think that's why I've become so bad, but it just made me think of that when you were like, oh, I'm bad at the score. Cause I'm like, I'm normally good, but I have people who think I'm terrible at it now because of recently.
Oh my gosh, I can't imagine what they would think of me if I played with them.
It would just be, honestly, they probably wouldn't think any less of you because I'm not gonna lie, it has been really bad lately. Something like I start to feel bad because I'm like, I should know the score. They literally just said it, and it's like my brain was in a whole other land.
I'm telling you, it just goes to show you how difficult that score, keeping track of score, is for pickleball. Like the positioning and then the third number, it's rough. But
you know what it makes me think of? You know that
what?
meme where it's the guy and the girl laying in bed and their like backs are to each other, and the girl's like, I bet he's thinking about other women, and then the guy like it's always some like obscure thought like, I can't believe I missed my third shot into the net on game point or something. It's always something like obscure. And that's how I feel like this thing is, where like people like, you know, my partner's probably like, oh, Chris is like thinking about this, like he can't keep track of the score. And then in my mind, I'm like, I can't believe Engage still has exposed polymer in the handle. Like my brain is just in a whole other place when I'm recording a review gameplay.
That's so funny. When I'm recording, like, that's what I'm kind of thinking too. I'm trying to focus on the paddle and how it feels, and I'm thinking about how it compares to other paddles that I've played with recently, for the most part. But it's funny that you brought up the exposed polymer, because when I feel exposed polymer, I'm thinking, gosh, Chris is gonna go ham on this company or this paddle.
Dude, I mean, if companies would just stop, I wouldn't have to talk about it anymore. Just stop doing it. It's just stop. I don't know. It's give me a break. But yeah, as far as like, for me, I think that covers most of what, when I'm teaching a beginner, it's mostly 3 big blocks. It's the kitchen, it's the serve, and then it's the score. After that, there's a lot of, you know, smaller nuances to the game. Like, actually, here's an example. I'm curious if you try and tell people to do this, because I do, and I think I'm going to stop telling them because they get so confused. Do you tell people the positioning, like, oh, you should actually be up at the net when you're receiving the serve? Like, because I do, and they get so confused.
No, I don't even tell them. I tell all the newbies, stay back. And then I notice that if I play with somebody else who's kind of a little bit more seasoned and they know how to play, they're like, no, you should step up here. And they look at me and I'm like, yeah, you can. But I just tell them to stay back. And then I would let the flow of the game like work its way so that they kind of figure out, like, oh, it's more optimal for me to stand up here. And if they ask me a question, it's like, oh, why do you stand up there? Then I'll explain. But if not, I don't tell them anything, to be quite honest with you. And I honestly let them stand wherever. Sometimes they'll stand in no man's land. And then if I'm on the other side, I will return it to them so that it hits their feet. And then if they hit it out of the air, and if I've happened to explain the 2 bounce rule, that's a good spot to tell them about the 2 bounce rule. Or if I already explained it, I'm like, okay, so that's what just happened there. Why did that happen? And then hopefully they're smart enough. It's like, oh, I should probably step back so I have this room to let it bounce. I'm like, there you go. And if they don't figure it out, I just let them stand there and I keep on doing the same thing until they figure it out.
Until they figure it out.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll, try nasty Nelson them a bit or body bag them just to like get them like, gosh, why is this always happening to me? It's like, I'll just be like, I don't know. Why? Why, Richard?
You're so much more savage than me. I do think that's good though, because I just think when you're explaining the rules, there's so much already to be thinking about, let alone if they aren't good at hitting the ball. Now they've got a million things circulating in their mind, like, oh, the ball's got to bounce twice. I can't hit it out of the air here. I can't, blah, blah, blah. So I think the simpler you can keep it without, breaking the game, and then explaining it as you go and being like, that's why, I think people will usually start to pick up on it without feeling too overwhelmed.
Yeah. No, that's good. Especially for people who are, we're talking about pure beginners who are essentially like 3.0, maybe to like 3.5. But there are people who are fairly coordinated and they can hit the ball. Maybe they've had some tennis experience who, and they're immediately up to higher 3.5, 3.7s to maybe even 4.0. Do you change what you teach them? at all, or
I think I would. If they can hit if they don't have to think about hitting the ball, I probably would start explaining the nuances more because they're just less frazzled about a portion of the game. Like they already have that down. So it's like, well, I might as well just tell you almost everything you would need to know without being like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of an obscure rule. Like I'm not going to get explained that you can like jump the kitchen and hit an Ernie or something, ridiculous, right? Like it's like,
right.
that's too nuanced.
Right, exactly. No, you're right. Typically for players who have a little bit more skills coming into the game and where they don't have to think about hitting the ball, I kind of let them figure it out on their own a little bit. And sometimes I'll just say, you, at least for the kitchen and the no volley zone, I just says, you just can't hit the ball out of the air until it bounces. And then I let them kind of figure it out. And then they will make some mistakes. They'll jump in or they'll jump out of the kitchen. And then I'll just kind of correct them. And then that's, in my opinion, the easiest way, to kind of teach them just the nuances and the rules. But then when it comes to proper technique and I guess strategy, what you should be doing, and they're smacking the balls really hard or whatnot and not doing drops. And I'm like, can't do that, man. I won't even say that. You can't do that, man. At least not to me. Just whack it back at them and whatnot. And I was like, you better learn what you got to do. And then finally, they're like, okay, and now I see. I need to learn how to do this stupid third shot drop. I'm like, that's right.
If it was like a someone who clearly had some racket skills coming in, I'd probably get to that point. But now that you even say it, now I'm going back to total beginners here, basically no racket sport. But I usually tell people like, the goal is you want to get to the kitchen. Part of me thinks I actually will stop saying that because I think if you're playing in the game and you go up to the net, people will just naturally become curious. Like, why do you always go up there? Or if, you're beating them doing that, like dropping the ball and bringing them to the kitchen, they'd probably just naturally become curious. Or they're like, oh, clearly it's an advantage to be up at the line and like, I don't want to be back here. But I think when you start saying like, oh yeah, like you want to get to the kitchen, now you're like, why? Like until you see it and understand like I'm losing, I think it won't connect the why.
Right, exactly. I played against some tennis players who've come into the game and, most of them are aggressive baseliners and they have good ground strokes, but they don't play too much doubles. And now we're playing a doubles centric game and they're both in the back. And I'm like, just keep playing the way that you do. You'll figure it out soon enough, Yeah. And then me and my partners are up here in the no volley zone and they're trying to bang balls. And if you have good enough racket skills or just blocking, or you can just roll it back deep to them, I mean, there's just almost no way for them to get points off you. There's no room for you to pass, if the people at the kitchen line are skilled enough to block the balls back because, what are you going to do? And then eventually they'll learn. It's like, okay, I got to come up here. They'll figure it out. And that's what you kind of have to do. You got to humble them a little bit without telling them.
Telling them.
Even if you do tell them, some of them are stubborn and they won't to. And then I'm like, hey, well, you're going to continue sucking. Like, this is what's going to happen. You're going to be 3-5 forever. Trust me. I know one of those guys.
You're like, I know one of those guys.
Friend.
He won't change anything about his game. He's so stubborn.
Yeah, that's right. Like, people have made shirts for him,
Yeah.
3-5
He's
forever.
a meme in the pickleball community. You don't want to be like this guy. So funny. That's funny. Yeah. Okay, well, I think that kind of wraps up the teaching portion. If you guys, again, if you have any interesting thoughts about how you guys like to break things down, I'd love to hear it down in the comments. Just let us know if you have a nuanced way of explaining things.
Right, exactly. Because the more, like, if there's a kind of like a rule book or a way to explain it better, we can get more players to play. And that's really what we want, right? We want more players to play the game, enjoy the game, get into the game quickly, and, I guess more players playing the game is just good for us and our community and the growth of the sport,
Yep, for sure. Yep. Completely agree. Well, the last thing for the kitchen here, I put this in here and then I don't really know how deep we're going to be able to go with this, but I was just going to talk about, I'm now going to the gym again and I'm actually working with Catherine Parento's trainer, Connor Derrickson.
What?
He's that pickleball trainer on Instagram.
Oh, that's right, that pickleball trainer. What a player.
So I had reached out a while ago. I think I had some small pain, and I was just like, hey, do you have any ideas for this? And then he was like, dude, I offer coaching services. I could work with you. And I was like, honestly, I would love that. But the way my schedule is right now, I just don't know how I would fit the gym into all of this. Like, I play a lot, and I think adding the gym on top would be too much. And I was like, but I'm interested. Let's revisit later. Then I messaged him like maybe 1 or 2 more times about like some pain or something. And then this most recent one, he was like, he didn't say it this way. He was much more polite, but it was basically like, okay, dude, like, let's just do this because like, you're asking me enough questions that you clearly care. Let's just get you in the gym. And I was already at the point where I know I should be in the gym. I like think about it. Like, I don't want to be injured. I don't want to get old and like have a lot of knee pain or hip pain or back, like all the common things you hear people say, like, oh, like when I was young. But I also know people who are older, 50s, 60s, and they're like in insane shape. And as I think about things, I'm like, okay, I should really start taking that more seriously now. Like, you know this, and we've talked about it enough on the podcast that I think people probably also get it. But I'm really big into finance, and I'm glad I started that when I was like in my teenage years. And I started thinking like, okay, what are other things long-term that I'm going to wish I had done when I was younger? And going to the gym is one of them. So I'm like, I need to just build this habit now and not regret it later. So that's why I'm doing all this.
Okay. Well, that's good, man. I'm glad you're taking this more seriously. So what is it that you're going to be working on? Does Connor, does he train specifically for pickleball, or does he train other athletes as well? And is there going to be some cross training or what?
Yeah, he's working with several of like the pros in pickleball. I don't know how many amateurs he's working with right now. It is a service he offers, so I'll try and remember to leave a link down in the description if anyone wants to check it out. But we had kind of like an assessment call where he was like, okay, what are your goals? And I was like, honestly, I just want to be overall more fit and like make going to the gym or being healthy like more of a lifestyle. Because I told him, I was like, look, I don't want to go like 4 or 5 days a week and go super hard, because I'm like, I know I can't maintain it. Like, what I want is 10 years from now, I want to still be doing this, because doing it in spurts, like we all know people who have done this, right? Like, they go to the gym like crazy, they get burnt out, and then they stop doing it. And it's the same thing with like diets. Like, you go on a diet, lose weight, get off the diet, gain all the weight back, whatever. So I was like, I want this to be long term. And then I told him, I was like, my primary thing is I want to avoid injuries, because if I, let's say, had a big like knee injury and I'm off the court, it's going to be very hard for me to make money. There are still ways I could obviously make money in pickleball, but if I can't review paddles for like 2-3 months, that's a pretty severe dent in the business. And I was like, I really want to avoid that. So I'm sure he bases it a little bit off what you want to do. Like, I'm sure with the pros, their schedule is much more amped and intense than my current one is, but I think it's pretty tailored to each person.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. Yeah, I've been doing a little bit more stretching and kind of like mobility kind of exercises, or just, just trying to make sure I have the mobility that I essentially don't lose the mobility that I do have right now, because that's a huge thing. And now that I think about it, I don't know if I would train specifically for pickleball. I mean, like, I feel like I would cross train. And I've always thought about, because I used to play a lot of basketball, I thought about like taking coaching for basketball, because I feel like the footwork would definitely help, at least definitely for singles, kind of like that side to side movement and kind of being explosive off of, the half step would be kind of interesting to do. And I'm trying to think of maybe what else I would probably do, Well, I mean, I'm curious. Let me know how your session goes. And
well, I did one already.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I got up at 5 a.m. to get to the gym by 6 to do it. Okay. Yeah, it was really early morning. Also, part of it was I wanted to get to Lifetime really early, because I actually used to go to the gym pretty regularly. Like, pre-COVID, I was going to the gym was just a regular part of like my life. Like, I would get myself into the gym pretty regularly. And then after COVID, like, I've just been terrible about it. But I lost my ability, and I don't know if you've ever experienced this, Will, but like, so I go to a Lifetime, and there's a lot of people that go to Lifetime, and especially like getting back into it, I was like, oh gosh, like, I know no one's paying attention to you when you go to the gym, but I was like really self-conscious about it. It's like, I don't want people to like be watching me. So I went to one of our Lifetimes that's pickleball specific. I got there right as it opened so that no one would be there while I was doing any of my, and inevitably people did show up. It was still very quiet for as far as the gym goes. Like we're talking, there's like 2 people in the room with me. Like it really wasn't bad, but I have to rebuild that muscle because that muscle is gone. And now I feel like I'm like doing something like, are they going to be like, bro, you're like doing that wrong. Like stop. I know they won't, but that's just like, in my head, what I was thinking.
I
of.
see.
But anyways, the first one I did, was good. It was like an hour-long workout. A lot of it was like core and my legs is what it worked on. And it was
get another video of you, like I went to the gym for 30 days. This is my transformation of my pickleball skills.
I'm not going to lie. I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about doing, after a much longer span of time. So I'm thinking, actually, this is another reason I kind of wanted to start doing this now is because, like I've talked about before, when I take the month of January off, I'm going to be unbelievably bored not being allowed to do work. And so I think I'm going to fill a lot of that time with the gym. So January, I'll probably go pretty hard in the gym, but also hopefully leading up these next couple months. So maybe after January, when there's like more of a, handful of months where maybe I've noticed a bigger change, I do think I'll talk about it and be like, hey, here's why fitness should be like more of a priority for people if they want to play a lot of pickleball. Because I'm sure I'll notice a difference in recovery time and like how long I last on the court.
Honestly, just in general, more people should take their fitness more seriously, but also for pickleball, because I believe pickleball is probably one of the number one reasons people are getting injured like across the United States. It's because, or did I ever tell you this story? So there is a kind of an entertainment style like place in Tulsa, and it's essentially, has 3 pickleball courts. Only one of them is really good for a competitive play, ping pong tables, etc. And they have a little cafe. They sell drinks there. And I just remember I was leaving and another guy came in. I was talking to the owner of that facility or of that place, and a guy came in and was like, hey, Justin. Justin's the owner. He was like, hey, man, I'm so glad you opened this place up. Ever since you opened up, my clients have just, quadrupled. And he owns like a practice where he helps people like recover from injury. He gets a lot of people with wrist injuries or ankle injuries, and I just thought it was just so funny. And also, I have a friend who's a nurse or a nurse practitioner, and she told me, she was like, yeah, dude, I'm getting a lot of more people like coming in and they're ankle injuries, wrist injuries from falling, and I think this just kind of goes to people they just don't know. They need to work on their fitness and their coordination, right?
Yeah.
Just moving their feet from side to side and balance as well. And that's why back to, teaching new players. I don't want to teach like my friends and whatnot and see them get injured. And I almost feel that I should do more, before they even pick up a paddle in their hand to like, hey, this is how you move. This is how you keep balance. And I'm just not sure how to do that. Did I tell you also that the first time I taught pickleball to my buddies Sam and Jeremy, I put this on my story. They wanted to play, and I was teaching the game. I went to the bathroom and I taught them a little bit. And when I came back, they were playing a full game of singles. I was going to do 2v1 against them. They were playing full out singles and they're going hard. And then Sam, he did like a jump or something, landed wrong. His ankle got busted. He had to do a little bit of like small little surgery, and he was out for like 2 months. I felt bad.
This is common, man. Like, I think pickleball, there's 2 reasons why this happens. I think, 1, people assume pickleball is easier than it is. So they're like, this is like, I'll be fine. And then 2, I think for the people who don't like go too hard, it's just that the game is so addicting that you just like, once you get into it, you're like, I'm going to go like every day. And now you're just overuse injuries. And that's how you get like tennis elbow and like, knee injuries or just all these other overuse things. Because I have a friend too, she's played pickleball before, but like not a regular by any means, like probably not even once a month, but enough to know what it is and the rules. And she actually recently, I think, did like tore her Achilles, something hurt her Achilles. And I was like, yeah, this is part of the problem. Like if you get really into it during one session, but you're not someone who like does running a lot or anything, I'm like, you could definitely mess yourself up. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I've met several people now where they always say like the first time they went and played got hurt enough that they had to go somewhere to have it like checked.
Right, exactly. And what's ironic about this is that just the other day, she sent me a screenshot or a clip. She was watching a series on Netflix called Blue Zones, and they talk about people who like live the longest. And there was a segment in there for pickleball. Like these people are playing pickleball, and they're saying like playing pickleball helps you live longer. But I mean, that you could say that for almost any sport. But I just thought it was so funny because in my mind, I'm like, yeah, I guess they do. But also at the same time, these people out here are gonna be falling over their, of their two left feet, injuring themselves. I'm just, God forbid though, somebody dies from like a concussion because they fell over trying to reach for a ball or something,
Yeah, no, for sure. So yeah, that's exactly what I would like to avoid, is not having any injuries. I would obviously like to be fitter when I'm older. And the next thing after I make the gym more of a habit will be working on my diet a little bit more, just because it's not, I don't think it's atrocious, but it's also not like, I'm not drinking soda every day. I'm not like eating cookies all the time or something, but I do think there's probably a lot that could be done there. And I know that too is going to be it's just a skill you should develop. Like, I think it's things we know we should be doing. Like, it's like finance and health are like two things everyone's like, yeah, we should do these. But like people are like, I can do that later.
Yeah, I can do that later. Yeah, exactly. Well, don't do that later. Do it now. Do it now.
We gotta get you in the gym. We can both get swole together. We can both be those like short Asian guys that are just ripped. The only thing is, every time I meet a like ripped Asian guy, they're always bald. So you and I are gonna have to go bald.
That's definitely not gonna happen.
What? What's wrong with being bald?
I'm not going bald. Are you gonna go bald? You gonna shave your head?
We wear hats all the time anyways. People probably think we're bald anyways.
Whoa. Speak for yourself. But back to the gym thing. I do want to get back into the gym, but I will say there was a time I did hit the gym. I actually had a trainer, and it was when I was playing tennis, and I was trying to gain 10 pounds, and I did. It took me about maybe a month and a half, but I will say the hardest part was maintaining that extra weight of muscle and whatnot. You just have to really work it into your lifestyle and the dieting and the eating. And that was very difficult for me because I was a person who, doesn't gorge or eat like a lot of food. And I had to take some like weight gainer, and it was just, I don't know. It was just too different, too much of a
lifestyle change.
Yeah, exactly. I think if I did it again, you'd have to work that, and you'd have to essentially create a habit out of these things to change the lifestyle. But yeah, I mean, it's easier for you. I mean, doesn't your brother go to the gym? Why don't you just go with him? Isaac's pretty
well, not anymore, because now he officially works for me full time, and so now he doesn't have access to his lifetime membership because he worked there. So he did say, he was like, dude, why didn't you do this while I worked at Lifetime? We both could have went. And I was like, yeah, that's a good point. I could have, but I didn't.
Yeah, priorities. You need to sit here and edit this podcast, so get to work.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm excited. Right now it'll start at 2 days a week being in the gym, and then I do want to get to 3, but I was like, I know I got to start smaller just to work it into like how sore am I going to be on days where I have to test paddles and all of that. But yeah, all of that to say, hopefully this inspires someone else to go get in the gym, not get injured, and make it a more lifelong habit. And hopefully a year from now we can come back and we'll both be swole and bald.
Okay. We'll see.
We'll see.
Put a note in your schedule, like a timer on your phone right now. Like
wait, I'll do it right now. Hang on.
Yeah, do it right now.
Let's see. Remind me 1 year from today if I am swole from going to the gym, and talk about it on the podcast.
And if you're bald.
Well, it's already doing all the rest, but I'll make sure to add in the bald part later. That's funny. I love doing these little reminder things because like a year from now, I probably won't even remember. I'll be like, what is this?
Will and I talked about this. Yeah. We had to clip it. And once you do, you have to come back and find this episode as well. You have to clip this. Maybe now you have to, right after we finish, we get off, you have to take a before photo.
True. There you go. Yeah,
a
I should
photo
go take a
right
before
now.
photo. I
Right.
should do that. That's a good idea. I didn't even think about doing that for the gym. That's smart.
Yeah. All right. That's it.
Cool. All right. Well, you got anything else, Will?
Nah, man. That's all I got, man.
Yeah, that's all I got as well. So
Shorter
thanks to
episode
everyone
this
who
time.
tuned in. Yeah, well, honestly, it probably was still close to an hour. Every time, and I'm doing it right now, every time we think it's going to be a short episode, it ends up being like the same length. We just always find a way to talk. But
Yes. I know.
yeah. All right.
Never a dull
Well,
moment.
that's right. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll catch you next week.
See you.